How's everyone this morning? Things are looking beautiful here in White Salmon, and given that we've had a few tech troubles, it'd be good if somebody in the chat could let me know that you can all hear me and see me. It looks good on this end. So let's see who is with us this morning. Looks good, sounds good. Oh yeah. Okay, thank you everyone. So we have about 40 people. A lot of familiar faces and friends, so I'm glad. It gives me confidence that I made the right decision continuing this through our retreat, so which will be starting tonight, and I can't wait. So we'll get back to that in a minute, but there's a few updates before we kind of jump into sharing maybe some comments and questions with each other. There should be a new post going up on our website that explains what's happening in brief and some of the changes for May, especially with the retreat starting. And then I put a little brief as possible channel update on our YouTube channel, so that if people are going there looking for morning and evening chanting and meditation, they'll know where to go. And Ajahn Sona's channel is clearly linked in the description there. And also that last minute change, just affirming that I will be here at 8 a.m. every morning for morning coffee with Ajahn Sudanto and to connect with all of you. And as I said yesterday, I'm going to try to keep that very much focused on the theme of the retreat. This is part of the value of having a group retreat, is to collectively enter into focusing our attention on a particular theme of Dhamma for 10 days. And really arranging our life as best as we can and putting forth effort to create favorable conditions so that we can kind of refresh and renew and deepen our understanding of a particular aspect of Dhamma practice. And this will be a very important aspect for those who are interested in a concerted and intentional spiritual life. Right mindfulness is really at the heart of the part of the Buddhist path that addresses that intentional effort to engage with your life and change your mind for the better. So I am looking forward to it. So yeah, I'm not going to call everybody out this morning, but it's great to see so many people coming back, and it's also nice just to hear that people find this valuable. They would like it to continue. And every day we're making little improvements here. So I want to get to the place where we have the lights and the cameras and the microphone set up so it doesn't take more than a few minutes just to turn things on and share some time with you and share some encouragement. Sometimes I think of myself as a teacher, but more I think of myself as a Dhamma practitioner and a spiritual friend to those who know me. And a lot of how I frame what I do is kind of like a Dhamma cheerleader, just encouraging people. Like I've devoted most of my adult life to this practice, and it's on my confidence in the worthwhile endeavor of studying and practicing and sticking with it over the years just continues to kind of grow that sense of confidence that this really is something that people should attend to if they want to better themselves and improve their access to happiness, peace, and everything that most humans find so valuable. So I'll continue offering that through this period of retreat. I will be keeping my eye on the clock and try to keep it to a half hour because there'll be so many other Dhamma offerings with the meditations and the tea times and Ajahn Sona's Dhamma talks in the evening time. So, and people are welcome, and I'd encourage you all to listen to those talks the previous evening, because I'm generally, when I listen to an Ajahn Sona talk, there's at least one thing or so there that I want to talk about or reflect on or heighten or emphasize. So that's kind of where my mind's going to be, and I'll endeavor to share a short reflection and also encourage people also to sort of say what they liked about the talk, what particularly impressed them or struck them as useful, and also it could be a chance to ask some clarifying questions. So themes of Dhamma that stray too far from that or stray away from that, I probably won't respond to. So, and after the retreat's over, we can return to a more diverse set of reflections. But as I've said many times, so much of the Dhamma is overlapping, so I realize sometimes it can be hard to make that that determination or something. So, let's see. So before going to questions, just one other thing that really excites me about this tradition and turning to a time of retreat is we have this tendency to be overly busy in our society. And I often think, many people are on the right path. It's just that the conditions of their life aren't as favorable as they could be. And part of the value of spiritual community, especially monastic communities, is fostering, the best conditions possible, a suitable environment, suitable relationships, suitable ways of interacting and allocating your time to support that intention that we have to cultivate the path of practice. And life is sticky, and it's hard to stay focused on that core intention that one has as a Dhamma practitioner. It's very easy to get distracted. And one of the conditions, well, they didn't have retreats in the way that they're existing now in modern times, residential retreats where lay people went to retreat centers. There is an element of supporting your practice to simplicity and fewness of duties. Like, this is something that comes up in the Karaniya Metta Sutta. There's a whole list of qualities that one wants to cultivate in oneself and foster in their life. And one of them is fewness of duties. And I know myself, I'm quite guilty of this, but I think also my culture and my society inclines in the other direction. There's this inclination to more is better, and trying to fill our day with more ideas, more books, more projects, more experiences. And that is somewhat inimical to the goal of the practice. And so a period of retreat is really a time to reconnect with how making just that one change of simplifying one's life and having few duties. It's almost impossible to have no duties, and having light duties can be a nice, important part of the day. There's still ways that you're giving. There's still things you're attending to and being responsible for. And as many of you I know have been on residential retreats, sometimes the yogi jobs in the monastery are a welcome addition. And I know many people have done retreats where they had nothing to do but practice. And they've contrasted that with having at least some sort of helpful role, like cleaning the hall or setting up the hall for the meditation or helping in the kitchen a little bit. And sometimes those duties, if they are light and we're able to hold them in a light way and they're not too obstructive, end up being a wholesome support for the mind, a little extra generosity, a little extra service, something that's, not so obsessively focused on how we're doing with our practice. So, so maybe that's my morning encouragement, is just to reflect on how you've set up the conditions for your retreat, and don't be too idealistic. Use your knowledge of yourself and what it is that helps bring a sense of balance into your life, and but incline in the direction of spending the next kind of period of time sort of not burdened with duties. So, and see what effect that has on practice. Like for me, it just engenders so many, like an increase and a strengthening of so many wholesome factors of Dhamma practice. So let me see what we have here in the comments and the questions. It's 10 after, and whoever's going to come is probably here. So I do have Skype open and on, and I saw something scroll by here, I think a question by Ruby, wondering if Skype was going to be available during the retreat period, and it will be. So if people want to call into the Pacific Hermitage Skype account, they can voice a question there. Because this is such an open format, I might not answer questions from people I don't recognize. And I guess it can be helpful to pop something into the chat window even to catch my attention, because we've had some problems kind of using that part of this chat interface. So, all right, well, scrolling back up, let's see what we have here. A little sharing from Susan and White Salmon. Just wanted to share that once I told my friends and families I'm doing this retreat, my heart lightened and I had a wonderful sense of well-being. Looking forward to this retreat. It's nice to hear. And I see lots of good wishes, both to me and the Sangha and to each other. It's nice to see. Oh, I see June. Nice to have you join us from Victoria. It's a lovely community there in Victoria that June is a part of. I know her largely through my association of Birkin. Okay, let's see. Paul has a question here. Please, can you explain what the wall hanging behind the Buddha is depicting? Oh, yeah. So let's see if I can get this right. It's a mirrored image. So, nope, wrong side. This one here. Yeah, so this little hanging here is a gift that a friend of mine gave me when I was visiting Japan. And it's from a temple that we visited. I think it's in Chichibu, sort of in the mountains, maybe 2 hours outside of Tokyo. And it's an area where he lived, and there's this wonderful little mountain temple there. And there's some hiking trails. You can climb up through the forest to view some caves on top of this rocky cliff. And then there's a modest-sized bodhisattva image up there. And that's what's depicted in that sort of printing there. So the bodhisattva's images standing on top of the rock cropping, overlooking the little forested valley where the temple is. So, and this is my office here, and it's something I had hanging in my office. So, name of the temple escapes me, but it was a lovely day going up there and seeing that place. Okay, Raymond from Germany has a question. Bhante, how can one invite the devas when someone wants to read suttas aloud and wish to share the Dhamma with them? By the way, it doesn't have to be a particular language. So, there's different thoughts about this. But, the Buddha seems pretty clear that insisting on particular languages is not something that he approved of. So I don't think it needs to be in any particular language. You're really just inviting the earth devas and the devas of the different near realms and beyond to come and listen to Dhamma. And you could do that in English. You can even do that silently. You don't necessarily have to proclaim it out loud, although I would just make that sort of invitation. It's a beautiful thing to do. I'm about to sort of read this Dhamma, which I find so valuable, and I hold up in reverence and with great esteem, recognition that other beings do as well, not just in this realm, but beyond, and invite them to come and hear the Dhamma spoken, or the Dhamma read, the Dhamma proclaimed. Raymond, if you've seen our evening chanting sessions that we've been doing, the very first part of the chanting session is done solo, and it's done by the chant leader, which here is me most nights. And that first little section before the other monks kind of join into the chanting is inviting the devas. So it starts off with Paritavana metang sameta patanta avikita chitta paritang banantu sake kame charupe kirisikaratate chantalike vimane. So that's in the Pali language, and that is an invitation for the devas to come and listen, sort of announcing that we're about to recite the teachings of the Buddha and inviting them to come and listen and rejoice in that. So I'm so glad you're talking about light duties. We need validation for non-doing, even the fun things, yes. Yeah, living in the Gorge, I have lots of friends whose days are filled with the fun things. And Bend is very similar. So I remember years ago, I think it was a talk or a book or something, Sylvia Borstein from Spirit Rock gave. She said, don't just do something, sit there, which I really liked. It was a very clever phrase that challenges that bias that we have to sort of being more, becoming more, doing more, having more. Haley, any advice for first-time retreat goers like myself? I've done short, non-residential retreats, but nothing longer than a couple days. Yeah. A little bit of advice, like, one, which is advice I like to give in general. It's quite a skill to sort of, learn how to have ideals and aspirations that motivate us and guide our practice, but to hold those in such a way that they don't create undue suffering. Um, and, also, like, to know enough about oneself that you're not setting the bar too high or expecting too much out of yourself. So, one piece of advice is, pay attention to that dimension, both as you set up the conditions for the retreat and your commitments to the retreat, which, because this is a retreat at home, there's a great amount of flexibility. So keep that in mind and come up with a hypothesis of what you think is going to serve your deeper motivations to develop practice, and make some commitments. But don't be afraid to change those if they're kind of wildly off the mark. The whole endeavor is to generate wholesome states of mind. And, we need to have some patience and forbearance with difficulties that arise, painful sensations in the body, difficult memories or emotions, and kind of frustration that often kind of comes up as we're trying to learn how to engage with the mind in this very intentional way. And that's part of the value of commitment. But, this shouldn't be an endeavor in creating extra frustration, misery, or suffering. And, on a home retreat like this, especially, there is some sort of shared sense that we're all doing this together when we're making a shared commitment. But Ajahn Suna made this very explicit that, this really is an experiment for so many of us, doing this using the technologies of internet communication and practicing in our home environments. So, more so than ever, I would encourage adjusting your commitment to really honor your deepest motivations and commitment to practice, but not creating suffering. And, find where that is. And also part of the retreat is learning the skill of being able to do that for oneself. So I think that's the main advice I would give one. Oftentimes the way this sort of plays out is you find yourself engaging in practice in a very rote way, and the mind's just not really doing anything other than what I call waiting for the bell. We're not really sincerely engaged, or we don't have the requisite conditions to really be working with the mind. Or if you find lots of feelings of bitterness or frustration or dullness or even sleepiness coming up, sometimes it can be because we haven't sort of found that sort of balance of how it is we need to be, where it is we need to be setting our commitment, and how it is that we can sort of rise to meet that, or then adjust that so that it's skillful. And, reflect often on how right effort really is not so much about doing a particular thing, but noticing the states of mind that are arisen and whether or not they should be resolved because they're unskillful, or encouraged because they're wholesome, and then doing those things that that will create less skillful states in the present, and the future, and more skillful states in the present and the future, and less unwholesome or unskillful states in the present and the future. So, Carolyn has a question here. Ajahn, could you speak to right resolve? So are you talking about determination here, Carolyn? Like there's a Pali concept of adhitthana, which is a paramita, or a spiritual perfection. And if that's what you're kind of referring to, it really is the ability that I just described. It's the ability to be inspired by some sort of ideal and make a commitment to it. It also could be, to be inspired to take up a particular practice and to be committed to that. And then like the cultivation of any dhammas, like our minds aren't already intrinsically pure, and neither are all of our ideas and our motivations. So, what makes it perfect and right is like learning how to do that in a way that is more wise and more pure and more balanced with the values of the Dhamma. So, we can have inspiring ideals that excite us and motivate us, but it can be for the wrong reasons. It can be out of a sense of self. It can be out of a sense of being and becoming. Sort of perfect the ability to sort of have these ideals, these practice goals, practice commitments, and for them to be more in alignment with our ultimate aim in Dhamma practice, and also more perfect, we could say. They should be, just inspired by a recognition of the goodness of the things that we're pursuing, and like pursuing them in a way that's free of worldly motivations and free of self. So, put that in plain language, like one could go to a retreat to impress their friends. Or one can sit at a certain number of hours of meditation a day, and part of their motivational structure to do that could be to prove to themselves that they can do it, or to impress another person, or they might have some sort of misguided notion that there'll be some inherent benefit just to sitting longer. And, although when the conditions are supportive, sitting longer can be very sort of helpful, it can also be very empty if one's motivational structure isn't in alignment with the Dhamma. So I hope that addresses what you're asking about there, Carolyn. If not, there'll be other opportunities to correct me here. Let's see. We're just about out of time for today, but I'll try to get through what we have here. So Maitri, would you recommend doing any reflective meditation immediately before getting into Anapanasati? I would, Maitri, and I often do. Sometimes one might make an assessment when they first sort of sit down to meditate that the mind is already very fit to kind of engage with Anapanasati. But sometimes a preliminary meditation can be the most skillful way to start to sort of prepare the mind for doing Anapanasati. Or one might have a commitment to doing reflective meditations on a regular basis, like I often do. So you can spend 5 or 10 minutes or 15 minutes doing the 5 reflections that we've talked about, or loving kindness meditation, or some other form of a reflective meditation as what I call a preliminary meditation, to sort of prepare the mind and to recall, refresh, and remember various aspects of Dhamma. And that can be incredibly beneficial. Right? Kind of remember, we're trying to create very wholesome conditions of mind for the growth of all Dhammas, including insight. And so, like, before going into really just focusing on tranquilizing the mind, overcoming the hindrances, and developing serenity maybe through anapanasati, which is like a very suitable technique for cultivating that, it can be good to bring up a reflection on the four requisites, or the five frequent recollections of aging, illness, death, separation from the loved, and karma, and the role that karma plays in shaping our lives. And it's almost like you're seeding the mind. You're reminding yourself of those aspects of Dhamma, and then you turn away from thinking about them after having brought them to mind and contemplate them a little bit, and deepening and purifying the mind. And then sometimes the mind will just quite naturally sort of return to those because they're near at hand, or they have been recently reflected on or recollected. So also I might say some of these meditations, you'll notice they have some extra added benefit. So maybe we're noticing in our anapanasati that one hindrance that's coming up often is kind of frustration and ill will or anger. So starting off with a little metta can be like an inoculation. It can be a nice way to kind of prepare the mind and maybe guard against or counteract that tendency for that particular hindrance to be undermining our anapanasati. So it's all about right effort and learning how to sort of skillfully guide this mind in more wholesome ways. And any forms of recollection or meditation that we have are just part of our toolbox to do that. So thanks for typing that out, Bob, sharing that. It's good. Don't just do something, sit there. It's also a useful little book about retreating at home. Ajahn, was there any particular sutta that influenced your decision to commit to monasticism, or what sutta should be thoroughly studied that may change a layperson's life? I want to say all of them. But I wasn't very familiar with the suttas when I decided to go forth as a monk. Or maybe more accurate would be to say before I started seriously considering monasticism. So I was somewhat familiar with the life of the Buddha as recounted in the Theravadan canon, the Pali canon, but mostly through commentarial works and books. I might have come across snippets of the suttas, but I hadn't read the suttas proper. So it was really something aside from that inspired me to first consider and then later explore and take up monastic life. So, and no sutta in particular really jumps to mind. One that is worthy of studying, and it's in the long discourses, is the Samanapala Sutta, the fruits of, what is it, the fruits of monasticism, or I can't remember how it's rendered by the English translators. But if memory serves me correct, I think it is the second sutta in the long discourses. And it's called the Samanapala Sutta. So I know just enough Pali to be dangerous here, but I think it's Samanapala, so like the fruits of being a samana. And a samana is a seeker of peace, or a monastic would fall under that. But samana is a more general, broad term that was used in South Indian or South Asian culture. So all kinds of yogis and ascetics and philosophers are considered samana. And the Buddhist disciples were samana. And then phala is fruit. So the fruits of being a samana. And that's a very long and exhaustive sort of sutta, which kind of teaches you not just about the fruits, but also it's a holistic kind of look at how the Buddha saw um, the correct way to be a samana, or the best way to be a samana, because there were all kinds of different takes in his society at the time. It was very pluralistic, and I believe India still is very pluralistic religious atmosphere. All right, well, let's see. I think we've come to the end today. What do we have here? Thank you. Maybe the last comment would be Steve's here. A daily schedule, as in retreat. Otherwise, I find myself wandering through the house and getting distracted. Yeah. Well, I think everybody needs, with this period of time of being at home. I've mentioned this before in one of these previous kind of gatherings. Like, I really believe in having a schedule. Maybe you don't have to schedule your whole day, but you're using a part of your mind to make commitments that support you in the best way. Otherwise, you're just kind of floating and a victim of the influences of Mara and the hindrances and comfort and preference. And that doesn't really take us to a very happy place. It's kind of pleasant in a dull way, and it's easy, but it doesn't really support flourishing and deeper forms of happiness. So, and this is going to be an exciting experiment for all of us, and especially all of you at home, like structuring your day and seeing how you can do that. And I bet there's going to be some successes there, and people are going to say, "Wow, maybe I don't need to go off to a retreat center all the time. Maybe I just need a quiet place and a good schedule for myself." There's good and bad in everything, and there's like being in a retreat center or being at a monastery and practicing is great, but you don't have the same flexibility because you're having this shared commitment, this shared experience. And I like the way Ajahn Sudanto conducts his retreats. There's more flexibility than in other retreats that are more structured. There's a nice balance between structure and flexibility. So, but you'll have even more of that at home. And play to your strengths. The times of day that the mind seems to more fit for practice, really prioritize around that. Don't just be led by empty idealism, thinking you need to get up at a certain time or go to sleep at a certain time or meditate for a certain time. Like, some people sometimes have this idea that they need to meditate for an hour every time. Sometimes that's not the best way to use your time. Sometimes you've made a commitment to practice, and walking is better than sitting. But you've made a commitment to sit. And do you really need to stick to that? I mean, can one walk? And are you not just shying away from sitting because there's a little anxiety about pain, or the motivation's a little weak or something, and it's not something you can just engage with and overcome? These are skills that one needs to learn as a practitioner. Really how to kind of take care of yourself and structure your day. So let's leave it at that. It's 8:40 now. And I hope everyone has a good retreat. And for those who want to join me at 8 a.m. each morning, we'll have a quick kind of half-hour check-in during this kind of retreat period. And have a good day. I hope the sun's out wherever you are, just like it is here. It's looking like a beautiful day. So take care.